The following is a conversation with Daniel Kahneman, winner of the Nobel Prize in Economics for his integration of economic science with the psychology of human behavior, judgment, and decision making. He's the author of the popular book Thinking Fast and Slow that summarizes in an accessible way his research of several decades, often in collaboration with Amos Tversky, on cognitive biases, prospect theory, and happiness. The central thesis of this work is the dichotomy between two modes of thought. What he calls System 1 is fast, instinctive, and emotional. System 2 is slower, more deliberative, and more logical. The book delineates cognitive biases associated with each of these two types of thinking. His study of the human mind and its peculiar and fascinating limitations are both instructive and inspiring for those of us seeking to engineer intelligent systems. This is the Artificial Intelligence Podcast.
And there is a certain thrill to friendship, and there is certainly a certain thrill to friendship under risk and to shared risk. And so people have very profound emotions up to the point where it gets so traumatic that little is left. But
so let's talk about psychology a little bit. In your book, Thinking Fast and Slow, you describe two modes of thought. System 1, the fast, instinctive, and emotional one, and System 2, the slower, deliberate, logical one. At the risk of asking Darwin to discuss theory of evolution, can you describe distinguishing characteristics for people who have not read your book of the two systems?
Well, I mean, the word system is a bit misleading, but it's at the same time it's misleading, it's also very useful. Yes. But what is executive function, and it makes you incapable of doing other things at the same time. So the main characteristic of System 2 is that there is mental effort involved, and there is a limited capacity for mental effort, whereas System 1 is effortless, essentially. That's the major distinction.
So you talk about it's really convenient to talk about two systems, but you also mentioned just now and in general that there's no distinct two systems in the brain from a neurobiological, even from psychology perspective. But why does it seem to, from the experiments you've conducted, there does seem to be kind of emergent two modes of thinking? So at some point, these kinds of systems came into a brain architecture. Maybe mammals share it, but or do you not think of it at all in those terms? That it's
consciously and automatically and very, very fast, and all that is in System 1. So System 2 verifies.
So along this line of thinking, really what we are machines that construct a pretty effective System 1. You could think of it that way. So we're now talking about humans, but if we think about building artificial intelligence systems, robots, do you think all the features and bugs that you have highlighted in human beings are useful for constructing AI systems? So both systems are useful for perhaps instilling in robots?
What is happening these days is that actually what is happening in deep learning is more like a System 1 product than like a System 2 product. I mean, deep learning matches patterns and anticipate what's going to happen, so it's highly patterns and anticipate what's going to happen, so it's highly predictive.
That's right.
What deep learning doesn't have, and many people think that this is the critical, it doesn't have the ability to reason, so it doesn't. There is no System 2 there. But I think very importantly, it doesn't have any causality or any way to represent meaning and to represent real interaction. So until that is solved, what can be accomplished is marvelous and very exciting, but limited.
That's actually really nice to think of. Current advances in machine learning is essentially System 1 advances. So how far can we get with just System 1? If we think of
Well,
deep learning and artificial intelligence systems and
I mean,
somewhat,
it's very clear that deep mind has already gone way, way beyond what people thought was possible. I think the thing that has impressed me most, if it could happen in Germany, it could happen anywhere. It's not that the Germans were special. This could happen anywhere.
so what do you think that is? Do you think we're all capable of evil? We're all capable of cruelty?
I don't think in those terms. I think that what is certainly possible is you can dehumanize people so that you treat them not as people anymore, but as animals. And the same way that you can slaughter animals without feeling much of anything, it can the same. And when you feel that, I think the combination of dehumanizing the other side and having uncontrolled power over other people, I think that doesn't bring out the most generous aspect of human nature. So that Nazi soldier, uh, but the objective is for people to accept it.
It's quite brilliant, actually. But so on the stories that we tell, sorry to ask you the question that most people know the answer to, but you talk about two selves in terms of how life is lived: the experienced self and the remembering self. Can you describe the distinction between the two?
Well, sure. I mean, there is an aspect of life that occasionally, most of the time we just live, and we have experiences, and they're better and they're worse, and it goes on over time. And mostly we forget everything that happens, or we forget most of what happens. Then occasionally when something ends or at different points, you evaluate the past and you form a memory, and the memory is schematic. It's not you form a memory, and the memory is schematic. It's not that you can roll a film of an interaction. You construct, in effect, the elements of a story about an episode. So there is the experience and there is the story that is created about the experience. And that's what I call the remembering. So I had the image of two selves. So there is a self that lives and there is a self that evaluates life. Now, the paradox and the deep paradox in that is that we have one system or one self that does the living, but the other system, the remembering self, is all we get to keep. And basically, decision making and everything that we do is governed by our memories, not by what actually happened. It's governed by the story that we told ourselves, or by the story that we're keeping. Interesting set of problems, because time is all we got to live. I mean, time is the currency of life. And yet time is not represented basically in evaluative memories. So that creates a lot of paradoxes that I've thought about.
Yeah, that are fascinating. But if you were to give advice on how one lives a happy life,
Well,
based on such properties, what's the optimal?
I abandoned happiness research because I couldn't solve that problem. I couldn't see. And in the first place, it's very clear that if you do talk in terms of those two selves, then that what makes the remembering self happy and what makes the experiencing self happy are different things. And I asked the question of, suppose you're planning.
This emphasis of reliving memories in building AI systems. So currently, artificial intelligence systems are more like experiencing self, in that they react to the environment. There's some pattern formation, like learning, so on, but you really don't construct memories, except in reinforcement learning every once in a while, that you replay over and over.
Yeah, but that would, in principle, would not be.
Do you think that's useful? Do you think it's a feature or a bug of human beings that we look back?
Oh, I think that's definitely a feature. It's not a bug. I mean, you have to look back in order to look forward. So without looking back, you couldn't really intelligently look forward.
You're looking for the echoes of the same kind of experience in order to predict what the future holds.
Yeah,
Though Victor,
once they're committed, people just don't change their mind about anything that matters, and that is surprisingly, but it's true about scientists. So the controversy that I described, that's been going on like 30 years, and it's never going to be resolved. And you build a system and you live within that system, and other systems of ideas look foreign to you, and there is very little contact and very little mutual influence. That happens a fair amount.
do you have a hopeful advice or message on that? Thinking about science, thinking about politics, thinking about things that have impact on this world. How can we change our mind?
I think that, on things that matter, which are political or religious, and people just don't